My interest in ceramics grew out of an experience I had with a fellow named Frank Ross, who was my high school teacher in 1963 and in 1965. He was a potter. We had a potter's wheel at the school and a small allocation of clay. I saw him make a vessel one day and it was very exciting and totally surprising. And I got very excited about seeing that form. So I asked Frank if he would teach me that, and he agreed to do that. So for the balance of high school, I spent most of my time in the art room making pottery. The experience with Frank was more than just the potter's wheel. It really was a mentorship relationship, and he used to bring in books on architecture, and he used to bring in books on photography, and he was very interested in jazz, so he used to bring in jazz albums. So a lot of my interest in those subjects were developed because of my relationship with Frank as his mentee. The other thing is that he really encouraged me to participate in all-city art exhibits where I won several gold keys. He took me to jazz concerts when I got introduced to jazz in a performance kind of venue. So it was really kind of a well-rounded education, a unique education that I experienced as one of his students. That altered and changed my perspective on what I was able to think about as possibilities substantially, and I'm still kind of living out that set of perceptions. Because I'm a clay person and familiar with clay, I've gotten to know a lot of people in clay. And one of the things that characterizes all of them, at least the ones I've met, and I've met a few, is this very legitimate, highly focused, discipline-based understanding of how to use materials in a functional way. But I think potters also have that unique ability because it's a communal activity in many cases. They have a sense of community that's very profound. And in many cases, a lot of the guys are functional people, so they're actually doing utensils or thinking about utensils in a way that involves using them in daily life, which is very attractive. So I think the craftsmanship, the community orientation, the sense of community, the functionality of much of the work, I think all kind of puts together a personality type that's very powerful. And I think we, as clay folks, have a unique contribution not only to the world of the arts, but the world of craftsmanship, the world of design, and I also believe in the world of developing healthy communities. Well, clay is very democratic. Everybody can pick up a piece of clay and do something with it. You know, you can make a pinch pot, you can make a slab pot, you can sit down at the wheel. So it's a universal material. Much of the world's history comes as a result of fired clay. So, you know, many of our buildings are clay. So it's a fundamental element of human existence, and it's a fundamental element of the earth itself. So I think that there's a ubiquitousness that comes as a result of being associated with this material. Ceramic studios tend to be gathering places for people, clay folks and non-clay folks, who are attracted to the idea of community. You know, the community kiln buildings and the community firings and so forth and so on. The field trips to dig clay. There are all these kind of communal things that come as the result of being associated with clay as we understand it. And I think that that's a very unique set of values and experiences that come out of the world of contemporary clay. Frank used to talk about NCECA as this, you know, sort of premier world-class organization. So I didn't know a lot about it, but I used to hear about NCECA all the time. And all these legendary people that were associated with NCECA. So one of my personal aspirations was somehow to either get to be a member of NCECA or at least go to some of their conferences, which ultimately I did. And so NCECA was mentioned very early in my development as both a craftsman and, you know, an educator. And it was one of those aspirational opportunities I was glad to be aware of. The Manchester Craftsmen's Guild increasingly is a presence in clay and education. we're cutting our teeth on becoming a significant player in the arts and education field, and a big emphasis on what we do is clay. So the fact that Manchester would now be recognized by NCECA as someone who is making a contribution to this developing field is very significant for us. It also is very prestigious to be associated with NCECA, so that we kind of enter more the professional realm of the world of ceramic art, as opposed to the part-time and hobbyist group. And that's fine too, but that's not really what Manchester's all about. So we need to be recognized by NCECA because it validates the work that we're doing in some really important ways. My biggest experience really is listening to other people. And that's one of the fun parts of being at the conference, because you meet these world-class, extraordinary people who are sitting around talking about their craft. They're talking about their philosophy. You're involved with, a lot of food, dinners and lunches and so forth, in which there's this kind of an exchange of professional insight and experience, which I found very gratifying and unusual, because it's very rare that you can actually get that level of person coming together in one place. You can go to a university, you can meet one professor or two, but to be able to meet hundreds, in a nationally focused conference like NCECA is absolutely beyond value. You can't put a price tag on that. There's power in numbers. The more clay people become organized under one banner, the more powerful is the discipline. It attracts more attention. It will attract, therefore, more funding, so that we have a much wider base to draw from. I think it's great for visibility, and I think one of the biggest areas we can make a contribution is in the rebuilding of our public education system in America. And that needs to be headlined by a world-class premier organization like NCECA, who would have the prestige, the history, and the commitment, I think, to make a very substantial contribution to this subject. I believe we all have an obligation to support an organization that is really representing us, the ceramics community. We individually can't do enough to support our own movement. Collectively, we have power. But NCECA is a not-for-profit organization, and as a result of that, it's very dependent on contributions and grants and philanthropy and so on. And I believe that as a set of individuals who are in love with clay and in love with the world of clay, by making a financial contribution to NCECA, it ensures the continuity of the experience, but it sets the stage for future generations of young people going into the field, but also continuing to raise the education and literacy level of best practices in ceramics, which NCECA clearly and does at an extraordinary level. I would like to see this country elevate its awareness and support of ceramic art to start to feel more like that. Secondly, I think that clay and the industry of clay has a lot to do with helping to rebuild our education system in this country. And I would like to see a clay program in every public school in America, at least at the level of professionalism of a Manchester Craftsman's Guild. That's a goal that I would like to see accomplished, preferably in my lifetime. I want the kids who walk through the doors of the centers to have virtually the same experience I had with Frank Ross when I walked in his classroom, which is the world opens up as a set of possibilities rather than a set of limitations.